Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Thursday. We're coming to you a little bit early in terms of days, but a little bit later than we normally are. And that's because one of us...
Roundtable after dark.
Yeah, roundtable well after I'm usually feeling like I'm at my mental best on a work day. But, you know, just coming off of watching a screening of a movie, so I am kind of fired up, ready to go. It was an action movie, so definitely was not going to be nodding off to sleep. But we wanted to get this in tonight because one of us, the better looking one in the nerd sweatshirt, has a fun night in store tomorrow.
I do. My wife got me tickets to go see Bert Kreischer, The Machine, here in Columbus for my birthday. So she and I are going to go out tomorrow and laugh our asses off. You know, we love a good stand-up show, and you know, we've seen some good shows over the years. Daniel Tosh, Ron White, Ron Funches, Kyle Kinane. I bet we've, you know, as I sit here and think about it, we've probably seen at least 20 different big time stand-ups. We saw a triple bill of headline by Dave Attell. In the middle was Lewis Black. In the opener, the one, the only, Mitch Hedberg.
Have you seen Bert Kreischer's movie, The Machine?
I did. I think I watched it like on the plane back from Tahiti or something.
Yeah, him and Mark Hamill. It came to streaming not too long ago. I can't remember which service it's on. I think it's Netflix. So if you haven't seen it, you can check that out. He has some of his stand-up routines are on Netflix as well.
Yeah. So as the movie critic, give me your movie critic review of The Machine.
I didn't like it that much. I need to look up to see what I gave it, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah. It's you know, it was kind of like his stand-up, and you know, sometimes those things don't translate. You know, when you take a couple jokes, they don't always translate to you know, an 87-minute movie.
I was right. It is on Netflix. I give it 2 stars out of 5. I didn't hate it. I just love it. You know, some of the movies, like the idea is kind of clever, but it like runs a little too long. I thought that about Sebastian
Maniscalco. Yeah.
He did that movie with Robert De Niro, and I liked the idea, but you know, after like 20 minutes, I was like, don't know. If
my wife loves Sebastian Maniscalco, and gotta be honest, I'm just not that into him. I'm more of the Anthony Jeselnik type.
But you also can't totally go off me, as most people will tell you. I'm a notoriously hard grader when it comes to my film scores. Like I've scored 8,500 films on Letterboxd, and I've only given 39 things 5 stars, which is a much less than 1%. So I'm like who's the hardest, you know, NFL grader, the people that don't like. I don't know. But well, you know, we were wondering, would we get any big news? And we did get a couple of pieces of news. I'll start with It came out today that Rashi Rice's lawyer admitted and had him admit that he was the driver. That was some of the mystery. It was his car, but it was that he was the driver. It's definitely a crime to leave the scene of an accident. No matter how sorry you are and cooperative you are when they find you, I don't see any way that he avoids getting a suspension.
Yeah, it's I suppose leaving the scene of an accident
It's technically a felony, I believe.
Yeah, but it's probably not as bad as being drunk at the scene of an accident. So, not that I have any proof that he was drunk, but it's the off season. You're doing 100-mile-an-hour racing I don't know. It's young people do stupid stuff. That's why we have a kid that's staying with us that lives with us now, and he didn't get his license until he turned 18, and so he's only had his license a couple months. We let him take the car solo for the first time tonight to go to a play at his high school, and we're trying to get him through his senior year. There's a little bit of sweating going on, but we got to believe. You got to let them fly. Can't keep their wings clipped, and hopefully.
Well, at least he's only 18 and stuff. Presumably when you've gone through college and you're, in your.
Well, I'll say my guy probably hasn't had as much handed to him as Rashi Rice has, so he doesn't quite. While he's a phenomenal bass player, he doesn't quite have the. He hasn't had quite the coddling that maybe Rashi Rice has had.
It was interesting. I don't know if you listened to the NFL Network, but they were doing a mock draft on the it's like the afternoon show with Jim Miller and Pat Kerwin. I can't remember what it's called right now, but
Drive.
Yeah, it could be afternoon drive. They're almost all. I know the morning is morning drive. I thought they were more clever in the afternoon, but I don't. It's going to kill me because I listen to it all the time. But he had a proposed trade that I thought was fascinating of the Chiefs acquiring Brandon Ayuk and giving their 32 pick to the 49ers who took Xavier Legette.
I think that's a fantastic trade, especially for me who rosters several shares of Brandon Ayuk. I mean, there's a little disharmony in San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
And Kansas City needs a stud wide receiver. And while it looked like Rice was ascending, he's still only going into his second year. We'll have to see how it plays out. He's probably looking at somewhere from 2 to 6 games of vacation time this year. So
I think he'd be lucky if he only gets 2. The other thing I would worry about is, Texas has been notoriously lenient on football players in criminal situations, but it's not out of the realm of possibility he ends up with some kind of jail time.
Yeah. He'll do that in the offseason.
Well, one wide receiver trade that we know for sure is happening is the Buffalo Bills yesterday shipped Stephon Diggs and a 6th rounder this year and a 7th rounder next year to the Houston Texans for a 2nd rounder in 2025. Dennis, I'm going to admit to being a little floored that Buffalo, I guess it's not incredibly surprising Buffalo moved on. I was a little floored they sent him to the Texans, and I was even more shocked that they sent him knowing they were going to take a huge cap hit and didn't even get a pick back in the current year draft. What do you make of this trade?
When I see stuff like this, often, my grandmother comes to mind. And in situations like this, she would often say, well, ain't that some shit?
And it is some shit.
So it feels like there was definitely a disconnect between Joe Brady and Stephon Diggs. And
And
as
between
good
Josh
of
Allen and Stephon Diggs, and between their head coach and Stephon.
well, no, I mean, because when Dayball was there, it was pretty sweet. And then for the first, what was it? How long was Dorsey in there? A year and a half, 2.5?
Well, no, he wasn't super. I mean, he started being an agitator last off season. There were a lot of rocky times. Him and his brother, which I forgot. I remember he played his way out of Minnesota. Do you know how many seasons he was in Minnesota?
3?
4.
Right.
You know how many seasons he was in Buffalo?
3?
Oh,
Okay.
I mean, I figured there was a little bit of symmetry, but he kind of, you could tell there was friction with him in Minnesota before his last season there too. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's so he's clearly in decline. I think he'll be fine here for a little while. He's going to be happy.
they also voided the last 3 years of his contract, gave him a pay raise this year so he can become a free agent after the year. So, and in the words of a couple of the GMs on there, they did everything they can to make him as excited as possible for this season at least.
Right. And and if it doesn't work out, they can him at any time, and what they owe him is what they've paid. And I guess I want to make sure that I don't completely discount the receiver he used to be when he was motivated, but he clearly was not as motivated, and his performance, like he was wide receiver 44 from week 10 on.
Yeah.
That's terrible for somebody that's supposed to be your alpha. That's absolutely terrible. And Buffalo was in it. They were good. And
Well, and in a big moment in the AFC title game when the ball came to him, he wasn't able to make a play. So,
he didn't make a lot of plays the second half of the season. So from Buffalo's perspective, I get it. They need to do something. It's been interesting. I've kind of went and checked out some of the mock drafts starting like within a few hours. There's a lot of wide receivers going to Buffalo in mock drafts at the end of round 1.
I mean, that wouldn't be a shock
round 2
because
might be better, but
so currently, they found something that really worked for them with Dalton Kincaid. They found something that was really working for them with the weapon that James Cook was. Clearly, they decided that Diggs and Davis weren't going to be the answers because I don't think they made any attempt to retain Davis. It didn't seem like. Khalil Shakir had some nice moments. They did go and get Curtis Samuel, and a lot of people pointed out it was a couple of years ago with Cole Beasley kind of working in those short area, slot areas. They had some real connection and fantasy gold. So could be, but this can't be the only answer. There was a lot of floated rumors too that maybe they would be in the market to try to trade for T. Higgins. I don't know that the Bengals would want to do that.
yeah,
because interesting.
Because they're probably going to face him in the playoffs if things go right in Buffalo. Right now they have Justin Shorter out there, 6'4", 223 pounder. I think he's more of the Davis replacement, but it'll be interesting to see. I don't think they're going to roll with Davis, Shakir, and Samuel as their top 3. It wouldn't surprise me that
you mean
if
Shorter,
they tried
Shakir and Samuel.
Yeah, Shakir and Samuel.
Shorter, Shakir and Samuel, not Davis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shorter, Shakir and Samuel. But it does bode well for Dalton Kincaid, and you know who else it bodes well for? Dawson Knox.
They roll with well doing 2 tight ends. And
if they roll with this, it could be, Kincaid all of a sudden becomes that third wide receiver, and he's out there as the mismatch. And Dawson Knox could still be a viable fantasy tight end.
Well, and they were more successful when they were more on the ground, which then leads me back to Latavius Murray and Leonard Fournette are not currently on the roster, so it's really just James Cook, and they brought back Ty Johnson, and I can't remember, they have some third back.
Darrington Evans.
Yeah, Darrington Evans, who's more of probably a special teams player.
Yeah.
So
who'd be great there? J.K. Dobbins.
I was thinking they could really use more of a bigger, like, pounding back to complement, because James Cook is kind of
He's
more
190
lightning, and
pounder.
yeah, I mean, he's more of the lightning guy, and he actually, to his credit, he was great in the lead role, 1,144 yards. Well, let's talk about the Texans for a minute. They've built a pretty swell NFL offense around C.J. Stroud. They've been working on the line. They brought in Joe Mixon, who we liked. We liked that move. They retained Dalton Schultz. That seemed like a good fit. Nico Collins, and Tank Dell should presumably be healthy. And you add Stephon Diggs. Fantasy-wise, there's been a range of reactions. I don't think Diggs comes and is 2021 Stephon Diggs, but I do think that it may. We have discussed before. When Tank Dell was healthy, Nico Collins wasn't quite the force that he was when Tank Dell went out. I still like Tank Dell, I think, the best of those receivers. I think Diggs arriving to me feels like it hurts Collins more than it hurts Tank Dell.
Yeah, because Tank is going to work out of the slot. It was wild. I was listening to Sirius XM Fantasy today in John Hanson's morning show, and they did a best ball draft. And Collins, Diggs, and Dell were drafted in that order in rounds 3, 4, and 5. And it's like, to me, that feels like
backwards.
Not necessarily backwards. It just feels like too high. Like, I love C.J. Stroud, but he'd have to throw for 6,000 yards to support 3 wide receivers at that level. And I just don't. I think he'd love to take a shot at it. I mean, he's a quarterback that throws the ball and doesn't run it. I just don't think that that's in the card. So somebody's going to take a bigger hit, and I don't know. And it could end up being all of them. This could be one of those seasons where you have 3 really good wide receivers and none of them break 1,000, or one of them just barely breaks 1,000 yards, but 3 of them all put up real good numbers. Just nobody's great.
Which, we kind of saw with Seattle last year.
Yeah.
Where they have 3 guys you like a lot, including 2 guys who had been top 12 together in the past. And, I like C.J. Stroud as a passer a little bit more than Geno Smith, but it's the same kind of idea. And I also wonder what this does for Schultz. A lot of people were excited to see him back, in top 12 tight end range. I didn't have him quite that high. I had him high tight end too. And I think that he might even be more of a mid tight end too, depending on it, because there's just not enough. Because Joe Mixon's a decent pass catcher out of the backfield too. To me, that you're right. There's, even if you threw it 600 times, doesn't feel like there's enough balls unless they're putting up 49 points a game for all 5 of those guys to reach.
So when I think back, like Teddy Bridgewater put up 3 top 25 wide receivers in a season, but I think the highest was only like wide receiver 18 or something. They weren't, maybe, I don't think any of them were a wide receiver 1. And that was Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, and I forget who the other one was, but
what was that? 2020,
2018, 2019? Oh, it's 24 now. Yeah, it could have been 2020.
I know. Let's see.
So I mean, it's possible to have good numbers, but I don't know that 3 of them can put up one of them could put up great numbers if three of them are good.
Yeah, let me see if this was the year. So it's Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore. Yeah, Curtis Samuel was 24. DJ Moore was 25. I think it was Robbie Chosen was the other one. Who was Robbie Anderson? And he's showing as 19. Let me look at his stats. So 19, 24, 25. That would make 2020. That was his Carolina season where he caught 95 for 1096 and 3 TDs. He was their best receiver at wide receiver 19, and the others 24 and 25. And they didn't really have a tight end who was producing much of anything. And if I recall, that was one of the years where Christian McCaffrey missed significant time in the backfield. So I don't think they had, I think that was a Mike Davis season, if I recall. Yeah, yes, Mike Davis was RB12 that year. So they didn't have, Curtis Samuel kind of edged DJ Moore because he had a lot of rushing pieces. I don't know that I see any of those three receivers getting a lot of rushing work. Look at us remembering all these. That's what happens when you've been doing this long enough.
That's right.
Well, let's dive in. We looked at running backs. We're doing our dynasty rankings for running backs pre-draft, and we did 50 to 26 on Tuesday. So today we're going to do top 25. Dennis, I'll let you kick it off. Why don't you give us 25 to 16, your first 10?
So, if we remember Tuesday, my 26 was Najee Harris. And you were like, oh, you liked him better. Well, I've got Jaylen Warren at 25. I feel like the split here is going to be close enough that where Warren makes up for it in receiving, Harris makes up for it with touchdowns on the ground. And I wouldn't be surprised if the split ended up being 10 or 12 spots between them instead of back-to-back like I have them. But I've got Jaylen Warren at 25. I've got Derrick Henry at 24. So, mind you, this is Dynasty. He may very well finish as a RB1 this year. I feel like we've seen the decline. And, well, he's going to Baltimore, and they're not going to just stop running the ball. They're not going to just stop Lamar running the ball. And I don't expect them to turn into a passing juggernaut. I just think that Henry, if I'm looking 2 to 3 years for Dynasty, that we're in the decline phase. So I got Henry at 24. 23, I got Tony Pollard backed up with Tyjae Spears at 22. That's who I was kind of moving around. I felt like after looking at my ranks, I felt like Spears needed to be in front of Pollard. And so I moved him, and now they're back to back. Again, I could see it split 5 or 10 spots as opposed to being back to back. But I think they're going to end up splitting the workload fairly evenly. And at 21, I got DeAndre Swift. Am I going all the way to 20? Or?
16.
Oh, 16? Damn. Guess I should listen to you.
Yeah, you can give us your. I figure we'll do 10, 10, and 5.
Gotcha. So then I've got Ramondre Stevenson at 20. I like Stevenson a lot. I think he's good. I think he can play in all three phases of the game. I just don't know what the hell is going on in New England, and he's going into his 4th or 5th year now. 4th year, I think. Who knows what's going to happen. 19, I got Zach Moss. I feel like he's going to be the guy in Cincinnati for the next 2 or 3 years. It's like he's shown people what he can do in a specific type of offense and what he can't do in another type. And Cincinnati's like, oh, well, we run that kind of offense. Come and play for us. Really cheap compared to what Joe Mixon was. At 18, I got Zamir White. Could really get affected by a rookie running back or a free agent offseason signing. But I do think that Las Vegas feels like they can trust him. He showed up last year at the end of the season, put up some good numbers. 17, I got Isaiah Pacheco. It's kind of where he's been finishing the first 2 or 3 years since he's gotten the job. He doesn't get enough passing down work. He runs like he's mad at the earth, the way he stomps his feet when he runs. I think for as big as he is at 210, 12 pounds, I just don't know that he's going to be able to withstand the physicality that he runs with for too much longer. At 16, I got Javonte Williams. I really wanted him to be higher. I love the skill set. The team is kind of a mess. He's had a couple injuries. I don't know if Sean Payton likes him or not. The way he used McLaughlin and P. Ryan last year, it's hard to tell.
That was 16.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sean Payton likes anyone.
And you don't like him back, huh?
I don't. Yeah. Denver needs a new coach, new general manager. I'm not looking forward to the football season. Maybe I'll work myself there, but it's been brutal. For me at 25, I have Chuba Hubbard. You had him a little bit lower, but still, this kind of cusp of running back 2 range. I liked what I saw last year. I think he can keep growing with that Carolina offense. I think that Carolina offense can take a step forward this year. But that's where I ended up kind of shaking him out because of his, age and opportunity. I have DeAndre Swift at 24. I like Swift. I thought he had a great year last year, but there's still a crowd in Chicago. What is that offense going to be like? You mentioned on Tuesday when we were talking about Roschon Johnson, you could see a scenario where he kind of ballooned up. And that's a little bit, of my fear. DeAndre Swift, too. Last year, he was remarkably healthy, taking a huge workload. But in the past, one of the things we've seen is sometimes he just can't stay on the field for all those games. So those kind of things made me a little nervous. Then I have David Montgomery at 23. If we're talking about the 2 to 3 year window, he signed a 3-year deal with Detroit last year. I like what he's doing. I think they keep using both of them. I like that offense. And so, right now I feel pretty confident with him there. I have Alvin Kamara at 22. I debated. I saw you put him a few spots lower. Not in the top 25. I thought about that, but he didn't miss a beat when he came back after a 3-game suspension, despite the fact their offense in general wasn't incredible. He averaged 17.9 points per game last year, which made him the 3rd best points per game average running back, even ahead of Raheem Mostert. I don't think he's lost, a whole ton, and I still think they need him in that offense. I'm also kind of think he could end up doing a little bit better with Clint Kubiak coming in, who is coming out of that 49ers tree. Then above him, 21, I have Javonte Williams. I'm a little lower than you. He's going into a contract year. I have loved the talent and the potential since he was drafted, but we just have, that rookie year where he was seemingly in a frustrating outright split, and we kept saying, well, he's going to get the job to himself after that, and it's going to be so much better. That rookie year is still his best performance. I know he got injured his second year last year. They weren't terribly efficient as an offense, but you're right, they used a lot of different backs. I think Denver is a wild card team that I could see drafting another running back this year. Both Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine are going into contract years. Denver's already projected to have over $100 million in cap in 2025. It makes me wonder strongly if they're just biding their time until they do like a full blowout rebuild next offseason. And does that include Javonte Williams? If it doesn't, where does he end up? So I have him a little bit lower. I have Tony Pollard at 20. I'm not that much higher than you. I think he'll be a good part of that offense in Tennessee, but definitely going to be splitting with Tyjae Spears. They've also invested heavily in their passing game assets. Above that, I have Devon Achane at 19. He was incredible when he was on the field. He missed a lot of time last year. He also, how sustainable is 7.9 yards per carry? I guess we'll find out. I felt more comfortable in the running back 2 range. I have Derrick Henry at RB18. I don't disagree with what you said, but if we're talking about a 2 to 3 year window, he signed a 2-year deal there in Baltimore. I think he's going to be great and reliable and is a great fit for those 2 years in Baltimore. And then I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of it for him. But looking at the running back landscape, I'd be more excited probably about those 2 years if I'm a contender than what's coming up. If you're not a contender, I could see, trying to move him. Well, it's going to be high. I have Ramondre Stevenson at 17. Curious to see what the offense and the team in general is going to be like. He was incredible in 22. Didn't get as much opportunity in 23. What happens this year? They already brought in Antonio Gibson. Feels like that'll take away from some of the passing game upside he had in 22. And then at 16, I have Joe Mixon. I think he lands in a great spot with the Texans. They gave him a contract extension. I think he'll be there for a while. It gives him a little bit of security. So that is my 25 to 16. Dennis, why don't you do 15 to number 6?
So at 15, I've got the aforementioned Joe Mixon. He's not terribly efficient at this stage of his career. Not that he was ever known for his efficiency. Okay pass blocker, good pass receiver, still a decent runner. In a scheme that's going to work for him. We've seen it work for him in Cincinnati. I think he's going to be just fine for 2 or 3 more years. They'll start to look and bring in somebody. Maybe Dameon Pierce kind of steps back up and learns how to run in the zone concept again. Maybe they bring in one of these rookies that can be the backup. But I like Mixon at 15. I've got Devon Achane at 14. I'm really nervous about the size, the number of touches, but he's super explosive, and I don't think he's going to get – I don't think he'll have the 7.9 yards per carry, but I think he's going to get a few more touches. Raheem Mostert's still going to be the dad bod back there, getting the most of the touches. But Mike McDaniel is going to put Devon Achane in position to make plays. That's what McDaniel does for his offensive players. And over the next 2 or 3 years, I guess I'm willing to give it a ride. At 13, I've got Kenneth Walker III. Again, offense that has a first-time NFL coordinator who's come out of college. It could be a complete nut. I mean, Seattle could end up being literally the worst of fantasy assets in the NFL. Or it could be a revolution. Walker, we know who he is. He's a solid runner, good explosiveness. Still tries to bounce too much to the outside. But I think he's the guy there over Charbonnet. I'm not worried about that. At 12, I got Nick Chubb. I want to put Chubb higher because of his pure running ability. But coming off another knee injury in an offense that, well, they want to run the ball, they've historically had Chubb share the load. He has never gotten what we as fantasy managers would like for him to get as a workload. He's a decent pass catcher. They rarely used him in a pass catching role. He was so explosive. He's coming off an injury. I know it happened in week 2, but they've got backups there. They got Jerome Ford, who they like. They brought in, the mercenary, Dante Foreman. They still have Pierre Strong and John Kelly as depth, but I want Chubb to be higher. I want him to finish higher to spite me. Do it to spite me, Nick Chubb. That way, as I look over my shoulder at my soon-to-be hung Nick Chubb autographed jersey. I can be like, you did that for me. At 11, I got Rachaad White. Really great pass catcher, not a terrific runner. Concerned about the offense, losing Dave Canales, but he's young. I'm going to ride it a little bit. At 10, I got Travis Etienne. They want to add somebody to take some of the workload off of him. Doesn't have great vision, really good straight line speed, mediocre pass catcher at best. I think this team is going to run a little more, which could open up some stuff for Etienne. I think he's going to be there through his rookie contract. Number 9, I got James Cook. Again, a little nervous because of the 199-pound running back thing we mentioned, talking about the Diggs trade. But I think at some point, I just got to believe that they're going to give these guys enough touches because of what they bring to the table. I can't play scared and play to injury, which leads me to my number 8 running back, another 199-pounder, Kyren Williams. Sean McVay is going to run him into the ground. That's just what it is. He's going to run him till he breaks, and if he gets healthy and comes back, he's going to run him till he breaks again. It's just what Sean McVay does. I think Williams is up to the task. 7, I got Josh Jacobs, only 25 years old, going into his 5th year now. No, 6 because he got franchise tagged a year, didn't he?
But they didn't pick up his. Oh yeah, because he had 5.
4 plus 1, yeah. So, but he's still only 25 years old. I like Jacobs a lot. Going to an offense with some good pieces. That was at 7. At 5, I 6, I got Saquon Barkley. I'm torn with Barkley. He landed behind the best offensive line he's ever played with on a team with some really good passing weapons, which Barkley's never had. It could be he could be the RB1 this year.
Let's just say he landed on a team that has an offensive line because he's never had, but not the best offensive line, a team that actually has an offensive line. I think that's all we need to say.
It should be a very interesting year for Barkley.
For me at 15, I have Najee Harris. I had mentioned yesterday, you and I see things a little bit differently. I have a much wider gap between Harris and Warren. And we'll see. It's
to be clear,
one of those unknowns.
I have way more shares of Harris than I do Warren, so I hope you're right.
I have Kyren Williams at 14. I loved him last year. I thought he was incredible, but he also, missed some time with injury. Only, 1 year to go on. I like the potential and the upside, and I have some shares that I've been stashing. I would love to see him thrive again, but I have some reservations. You talked about going to run him until he breaks down. That isn't always that long for guys to be, the guy for Sean McVay. Cam Akers got maybe 1.5 season. I feel like Darrell Henderson got like half a season. Todd Gurley's body gave out on him after a couple of years. So, makes me a little nervous. I have Kenneth Walker, same place as you, RB13. I like what we've seen, but the presence of Charbonnet kind of prevents me from vaulting him up higher. I have Rachaad White at 12. I thought he got better as a runner last year. Some of that's going to be contingent on Tampa Bay's offensive line. It doesn't seem like they've done a ton, but it doesn't seem like it's gotten demonstrably worse. He's also a great pass catcher. They also have next to nothing behind him. They brought back Chase Edmonds. They have Sean Tucker, but we didn't see him do anything last year. I'm a little different than you. I have Isaiah Pacheco at 11. He did finish as RB15 last year, but he missed 3.5 games with injuries. So,
as he's wont to do.
Well, that may be. That's another team that doesn't really have much of anything behind him. And it seemed like their offense really, when it got going and started getting itself together, much like Buffalo, became a stronger rush offense. If you look at the second half of the season, then leaning on their tight end and finding a few wide receiver plays. I think that they found a formula that worked for them, and I think he fits in there. But we shall see. I have Travis Etienne at 10, just like you. The only thing that makes me nervous is they haven't made any. There hasn't been any word about them picking up his 5th-year option. We're less than a month, I think, before they have to declare those. I don't think they will. And then what happens after this year? So, love what we saw last year. He had no rookie season and, could be going into a contract year, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. We shall see. At 9, I have Nick Chubb. You brought up some valid concerns. I don't know. I have concerns about a lot of the guys in here, so dropping them in ends up being a little personal preference. I have James Cook at 8. Loves what he did last year. I think Buffalo's certainly looking at the run game. And then 7 and 6, same as you. I have Josh Jacobs at 7. Great talent, great location, 4-year contract, which is great. Saquon Barkley at 6. Great talent, great location, 3-year contracts. You got to be feeling pretty good about that. Both those guys get some kind of security and are in places where they can thrive.
All right. Checking in at number 5 for me, I have Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be back this year. Could be the RB1. He has that potential. We'll see what kind of growth we get out of Anthony Richardson. But it was tough. He's got bell cow back size. And the guy I have at 4, Jahmyr Gibbs, doesn't. Gibbs is a 200-pounder. But I think he showed us last year he can run enough and catch the ball so good. Like, for me, like, I have to conceptually, like, figure out, like, why am I so high on Gibbs and not as high on Cook when they're, like, kind of the same back? They're, like, the same size. I mean, I think Gibbs is just better than Gibbs is what it comes down to.
Is it that little lion emblem on their jersey?
It's not the Honolulu blue and silver jersey. Well, maybe a little. But I got Jahmyr Gibbs at number 4. I have Christian McCaffrey at 3 based on age. And I know he's different. He's an outlier compared to most running backs, but he is 27 years old. He has almost 2 full seasons missed. He had 2 seasons where he only played 10 combined games. Yes, he's in a fantastic offense. Maybe there's going to be a shakeup and they trade Ayuk. There's lots of talk about Ayuk getting moved. The offense is very well suited for him, and it feels like he could play 10 more years. But he's 27 years old, and the guys I have in front of him are not. And number 2, I got Bijan Robinson. And at number 1, I've got Breece Hall. I think you can make arguments that these could go either way. I have Hall at number 1 just because I feel like I've seen a little bit more out of him. And that's really an Arthur Smith thing, I believe. Bijan has everything it takes. He's got the size, pass catching ability, the speed, and Breece Hall has it as well. I don't think if you're starting a fantasy team, I don't think you can go wrong with Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, so you and I have the same 5 running backs in the top 5, but just different orders. And I think it comes down to preference. I have Gibbs at 5. I like him a lot. I have quite a few shares of him. I have Taylor at 4. I really like him too. I don't think it's anything wrong with the fact that you have them flipped either. I could see arguments for that. I think all 5 of these backs are really good, and we think will be big, solid fantasy producers, which is what you're looking for. In fact, for me, it goes basically the top 7 if you included Barkley and Jacobs. If I have any of those guys on my roster, I'm feeling pretty good. If I have anyone from 8 to 25, I have hope. But I don't have like security, I guess would
Right.
be how I would put it. At 3, I have Brees Hall. I love what I've seen from him. I have Bijan Robinson at 2, and I still have Christian McCaffrey at 1. And I get what you're saying about age, but last year Christian McCaffrey scored 391 points. Brees Hall also played uh, the entire season. Actually, played one more game than Christian McCaffrey and had 101 fewer points, averaging 8 points less per game. Bijan Robinson got saddled with not the greatest coach and maybe not the greatest situation. He also played one more game than McCaffrey and ended up with more than 150 fewer points. There's something about that San Francisco offense and Kyle Shanahan, and we have a lot of hope that Atlanta's offense is going to be better and that the Jets offense is going to be better with Aaron Rodgers. But both those situations could be a little combustible too. And if we're only looking at 2 to 3 more years, I feel like Christian McCaffrey is more of a league winner for me in the next 2 years than those two guys. Not that I wouldn't be happy to have those two younger guys.
I get it. I don't deny what you're saying is valid. I want the younger guys. So,
And that's where I think it just, like I said, all 7, from Josh Jacobs through, Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey. If I have any of those guys, I'm feeling pretty good about at least one running back position.
So do you know who the number 2 back points per game was last year? Without clicking resort?
I think it was.
I know who
I
it
think
is.
it was Achan, but
no, it was Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams scored 4 points more than Devin Achane per game. So Kyron Williams scored 21.3.
I really like Kyron Williams too, and but you just miss it. So both he and Achan, when they were available, were phenomenal. But I believe Kyron Williams actually missed like 5 games in a row in a pretty brutal stretch of the fantasy season.
4 games in a bye week.
Yeah, but that's 5 weeks you don't have him in a pretty decent stretch. Achan, he was out for a few weeks, and then I remember the week he came back, it was like, should we start him? No, yeah, I'm going to do it. And he got like
1.5 points.
Yeah,
and then
he's out, and I'm like, nope. And then I think I actually benched him the following week because I was like, I'm not taking a chance right now.
Yeah,
and I think
he scored 25.3 points that week.
But that's where, to me, that's a little bit of the difference between the 7 guys I'm talking about and everything below that. I'm not upset that I have some of those other guys, but sometimes I think to myself, would I rather have Rachaad White, who might only give me 8 points, but also can give me 30 points, but is probably going to be there every week? Or would I rather have Kyron Williams, who can give me 24 points when he's there, but you
might have to cover for 4 weeks.
Yeah. So it's the running back landscape feels a little bit interesting. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I think we kind of talked about the first one, so I'm going to jump. Who is somebody in the kind of RB2 range for you that you feel like could make the leap that you might be a little low on?
So there's probably 3 guys that I think could move up to the RB1 spot, into an RB1 spot. And that's Javonte Williams and Tyjae Spears and DeAndre Swift. I think they all have the ability. It's going to come down to, will the team give them the opportunity? I don't know that any of the three of them are going to get a consistent enough opportunity. But if Ty Spears finished as RB11 and RB8 over the next 2 years, or RB8 and RB11 over the next 2 years, I wouldn't be surprised. The same with Javonte Williams. I think the talent is there. DeAndre Swift, last year he had such a good year. All we needed was for Jalen Hurts to just let him score a few touchdowns, and he'd have been like 6, 7, 8 spots higher. He's going to be in Chicago, and they're going to have a rookie quarterback. So I had a Empire League reset this year, and we did our reset draft. So just finished up today, 35 rounds, and rookie draft picks were draftable assets. And with the 112, I selected the 101. So my quarterbacks are going to be Caleb Williams and Aaron Rodgers. I don't really have a third quarterback. I'm going to have to do some trading. But Caleb Williams could be great. He could be a train wreck. The draft prep season with him, with Marvin Harrison, as much as I love Harrison as a Buckeye, the whole go to the combine and be like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything. And then the pro day, he didn't do anything at the pro day either. And I'm like, damn. Now, I also get he doesn't have anything to prove, but, that also gives you a little pause.
I think the guy for me that I'm going to say, I'm going to go with Joe Mixon. You mentioned he hasn't always been incredibly efficient, but he was RB6 last year just because he's a 3-down presence and volume. And, I wouldn't be shocked to see him get there and be reliable like that for the next 3 years in a good Houston Texans offense either.
I love that pick.
Who in this group makes you the most nervous?
Let me count the ways. McCaffrey because of age and potential injury. Jonathan Taylor because we've seen it kind of go sideways a little bit, and now they've got a second-year quarterback that was only played 2 games and was injured in 2 others last year. Now, granted, I suppose Joe Flacco could be a good backup. Rashad White is somebody that I think has the potential to be real productive for fantasy, but there's a lot hinging on the new offensive coordinator for Baker Mayfield, for Mike Evans, for Rashad White. Man, Dave Canales made Geno Smith look fantastic, and then he went to Tampa Bay and did the same thing. I'm real hopeful for Bryce Young because of that, but man, I'm really scared about those Tampa assets. Those are probably the ones that scare me the most.
Mine's Nick Chubb. I love Nick Chubb, but you brought up a lot of, he's had a couple of major injuries on that knee. Are they going to try to be a little bit of a more robust passing offense? Because now, they have 3 receivers. I'm not going to say 3 good receivers because I've seen Jerry Jeudy play. They also have a good pass catching tight end. We saw Jerome Ford mix in. I think them signing Donta Foreman might be a little bit of a sign they're worried that it might take Chubb a little bit to get back into it. So that one makes me a little bit nervous. Last question for you. Drafts coming up. When we were at this point in the time last year, we were pretty sure that Bijan Robinson and or Jahmyr Gibbs were going to go somewhere in our top 25, probably somewhere close to our top 12. And we see now they're both top 5. Do you think there are any incoming rookies that are going to crack your top 25 on May 1st?
So there are a couple landing spots that I think are favorable for running backs. If Dallas does not sign Zeke and they draft a rookie running back in the 2nd round, I could see that running back as somebody that, as long as they can withstand the pass protection, as somebody that may be able to step up and finish in as a top 25 running back.
Dallas would be the spot for me too. And if there's a couple of these other teams that I've mentioned that could be looking at running back. If anyone goes for a running back in the second round, I think that would raise my eyebrows, at least in the 20 to 25 range.
Yeah, and so Carolina is a spot too. I know Chuba Hubbard kind of stepped up, and they signed Miles Sanders to a good for a running back contract last year. But a running back could stop in there, especially, they added those two big guards. Their offense is changing. We've seen what Rashad White did. Somebody like Jonathan Brooks or Trey Benson out of Florida State landing in Carolina could easily take over that top running back job. I'm trying to think, Cincinnati.
Raiders could be another one. Cincinnati.
Raiders, yeah. They're, it's not going to be great for Zamir White, but who else looks like? I don't know that New Orleans,
if they drafted a running back, I think that would just be a disaster for everyone because they already have 3.
Yeah. The Giants, if they draft a running back, that's, they hopefully they draft some offensive linemen first. But, as good a year as Devin Singletary had last year, I'm not necessarily sold on him as a long-term asset.
Yeah, so I think there's a chance we could end up with one, in the top 25, but it doesn't feel like as much of a lock as it was in the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's no clear-cut stud running back that's gonna just step in and be the guy.
And that wasn't the case with quarterbacks, which you've already been through, and it won't be the case with the next position group we're going through. We're going to start receivers next week. On Tuesday, it'll be 50 to 26, and on Friday, it'll be 1 to 25. We're going to look at where we have our top 50 now before rookies get merged in, but I think both you and I suspect that there are a few rookies that will end up at least in the top 25 post-draft, or even if we were considering them now. So it'd be interesting to see the movement there. Gives us also a little bit of time to keep tweaking and working on things. See if there's any more blockbuster wide receiver trades before all that goes down. But Dennis, you get to listen to Bert Kreischer. I get to go get haircuts with my wife. But if people just need something to fill their Friday, what can they do?
You know what? While you're getting that haircut with your wife, you can pop that earbud in. Go to your favorite podcast platform, migrate from Google Podcasts over to something else. I keep saying that every week, but I still haven't done it myself. And listen to the Fantasy Football Roundtable. Give us a like, subscribe, download, listen, don't listen. Just as long as you download. That's what matters.
One day it's going to be, you're going to pop open your Google Podcast and it's not going to be there. And that's when you're going to make the change.
That's right. I got a bunch of podcasts I don't listen to on there. So it's like, man, it sure seems like a lot of work. Let me wait.
Well, that'll do it for us tonight and for this week. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We will see you on Tuesday with some wide receiver talk.